Divorce is one of the most challenging transitions in life, and without the right guidance, it can quickly turn into a disaster. Welcome to Dodging Divorce Disasters, the show that helps you navigate the legal, financial, and emotional pitfalls of divorce before they happen. In each episode, I sit down with a top professional in the divorce community to hear real-life war stories, cautionary tales from the trenches of divorce. But I won't leave you with just the horror stories. The experts will break down exactly what went wrong and, more importantly, how you can avoid making the same mistakes. Whether you're in the early stages of separation, deep in the process, or supporting someone through it, we are here to help you move forward with clarity, confidence, and fewer regrets. I'm your host, Lori Hawkins, and I am a local expert in divorce real estate. I am so excited to be sharing these incredible professionals with you. Let's dive in. I am so excited to have Sarah Sykes here with me today. Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Hi, I'm fabulous. How are you?
I am so good. I was trying to think back. We were talking about before we started recording how we met, and you reminded me about Second Saturday because you were a presenter for the
Yes.
Second Saturday up at Lake Norman, which
Yes.
very much appreciate you doing. So it is good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, I am going to just kind of let you give our listeners the name of where you work, where you practice, even if you get into counties, and kind of let people know where they can find you and the type of work that you do.
Yeah. I work for Turner Family Law. We are a firm that is based out of Greenville, South Carolina. I have just opened our Rock Hill office and serve clients in both North and South Carolina. In North Carolina, I'm, kind of all over. I'm in Mecklenburg, I'm in Gaston, I'm in Cabarrus, I'm in Union. In South Carolina, I'm really everywhere in the state. So York, Lancaster, I have some cases in Greenville, Anderson, all over the state. But yeah, and I primarily do family law. I do some DSS work in North Carolina, so I am a parent attorney. So that's primarily my practice and I love it. I've been doing it for right about 5 years and it has been great.
That is great. Now, a parent attorney, is that a parent coordinator or
No.
what is a parent attorney?
Yeah, so a parent attorney is in union you can be appointed. They have a list and it's attorneys that represent parents that can't afford an attorney but are going through juvenile cases. TPRs or if, there's been a petition filed for neglect or anything like that. So I am on that list and have those cases and really enjoy that work.
Okay, I had never heard of that before. That's good. That's good to hear and for our listeners to know because I'm sure there are a lot of cases out there like that. So
Yes.
that is great. Well,
Yes.
good. Now, is there any kind of particular niche that you do or any kind of cases that you really enjoy doing and why do you find those fun to do? Fun as whatever these law cases can be. I use that word very loosely.
Yeah. I don't have a particular niche, but I do love custody cases. And the reason I love custody cases is because I think you have the ability to come up with such creative solutions in those cases, especially if you're doing it collaboratively. I think that you and the other parent can look at, what works for you as far as, a schedule or your holidays or, any sort of specific provisions to put in the order. So I do love custody cases for that reason because I just think there's so much flexibility and we can become so creative to make sure that works for both parties and the kids.
Exactly.
I
No,
love that.
I completely agree with that. And I think if I did family law, I think that would be something that would interest me too. Now, I before we jump into your craziest divorce story, and I know you've got a good one. I always like to talk about a fun fact. And you had put on your sheet that you gave me that you and your best friend from high school travel around the country to see John Mayer on tour. Is that right?
Yes. So we have seen him in multiple cities. Every time he comes out with a new tour, or even on the same tour, we've seen him in different cities. We decide to go to different cities around the US. We're thinking maybe next we take it international. But we have had so much fun doing it. We go to New York. We've seen him in Baltimore, Boston. We saw him in Chicago twice. But it's just like our fun little thing, and we get to look forward to it and see new cities and see our favorite artist, John Mayer. We love
I
him.
know. Have you got to meet him before?
No, but I'm dying to meet him. I keep up with him on social media. I listen to his SiriusXM radio station. I just saw that he was on Bravo with Andy Cohen. I'm a big Bravo fan. And so obviously love that. And then he said last week, I think that he's back in the studio. So I'm hoping for new music so that way I can plan another trip to go see him on tour.
Maybe he'll listen to this podcast
I would love that.
and invite you backstage to one of his concerts.
I would love that. I will send you pictures if that happens. I will just be over the moon, freaking out. We just love him so much.
I love that for you. I really do.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump into the meats and potatoes of what this podcast is all about. I love for you guys to tell me your craziest divorce story and then help our listeners by giving them some advice on how perhaps they could dodge these divorce disasters in their own process of going through a divorce.
Yeah. So I think my craziest one has to be I was working alongside another attorney. And I actually talked to her last night and I was like, I need your help brainstorming this. And she goes, oh, easy. And we had this one case where there was, an opposing party and he didn't want to participate in the case at all. The case began by our client filing a domestic violence protective order against him. He leaves. Anyway, long story short, about a year later, he gets remarried. He doesn't want to pay child support. He doesn't want to participate in the case at all. He ends up stealing our client's car while she's out running errands one day. Our client does not have the ability to get a new vehicle because he is not paying her anything. And then he ends up, $43,000 behind in child support. Well, there is a warrant issued for his arrest, and he knew what my managing attorney looked like. And so when we were, talking through this case, she's like, we need to get him arrested, and we knew where he was going to be. But she's like, he knows what I look like because we've been in court before. So she sends me to court. He's, there on a domestic violence protective order with his new wife at the time. And she sends me to court to get this warrant, get him arrested on this warrant. And, I am a baby attorney, don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, what are we going to do? Like going up to the bailiffs, like, hey, I need to get this person arrested. He's $43,000 behind in child support. Anyway, long story short, he was in their system under a false name and a false date of birth, so they couldn't find the warrant. So we're there for, a good hour going back and forth. Like, I know that this man needs to be arrested, but got him arrested and he was in jail, I think for about 2 weeks for non-payment of child support. So,
Oh
I
my
don't
goodness.
I don't know that there's a whole lot you can do to avoid that. I will say the worst types of cases that we see are when, one party doesn't want to participate because it just makes, for you or your client, it makes the process 10 times more expensive because then everything falls on them. They're the ones filing the motions. They're the ones trying to enforce the motions, things like that. I think really my only advice there in order to avoid that is get a prenup. Have it outlined before you get married, what's going to happen with your assets, how everything's going to be divided, things like that. Now, things like custody and child support can't be outlined in those prenups, but other assets and alimony can. So get prenups. We're pro prenup. Um, yeah, so that's kind of my craziest divorce story.
Now that's interesting. How would a prenup have changed the outcome? Would that have helped somehow to be able to get him arrested easier? Is that where you're going with that?
So I don't think it would have helped get him arrested because, as I said, the child support, you can't put that in a prenup. You can't outline custody and child support. However, I think it would have given her some assets that they had previously agreed on that it would allow her to get things like a new vehicle or, be able to support herself and the kids. Even if it's not through child support, it's something. We're saying, okay, she's going to get the house or she's going to get her car, or things like that. Obviously, that doesn't stop him from stealing her vehicle, but it might
Okay.
help.
Okay, that makes sense because in this particular situation, really all she was relying on was that child support because that was all he would give her or however that worked out. So when he stopped those payments, she was just out of luck. I see
Yes.
what you're saying. I see what
And
you're
then you're
saying.
having to go to court and go after assets or, get creative. So
How do you convince someone that's getting married that a prenup is not just setting yourself up for thinking you're gonna get a divorce?
yeah. So I think the best way that I describe these prenups is think about an insurance policy. You don't get an insurance policy on your house thinking, oh, something's going to happen. It's going to flood. There's going to be a fire, something like that. You don't get a prenup thinking this is going to end in divorce. You get it as a backup plan. You have it there in case it does happen. And, if it does, then you're not going through the terrible process of going through litigation or fighting over these assets or things like that. So I always describe it that way. I know it's an uncomfortable conversation, but I think that it is so important. I recently just got married, telling my husband, listen, we have to get a prenup. We need to be upfront about our assets, how this is, going to look, what we own right now, what we're coming into the marriage with. And I think, that conversation is just so important. But I think, it is definitely not, even though it seems like it, that, your marriage is doomed, but it's there in the event that something happens and you need it.
I think that is a great way to describe it. Just it's like a regular insurance policy. It serves the same purpose.
Yeah.
Really does. That is a great way. I've never heard it said like that before. Are prenups something that you can go online and print out forms and do, or is it something that you need to go through an attorney and do?
That is a great question. I always say go through an attorney. We have had people come into our office, and I think this is true with any legal document as far as, separation, divorce, prenups, postnups, anything like that. Um, you know, those online documents don't necessarily ask you all of the questions that, are needed in order to formulate these documents. And sometimes things that are put in those documents, you don't realize what you're doing. We've seen parties, sign away their entire equity in a house. So I think that I would tell you to go through an attorney certainly, because I think that you can put yourself in danger of signing something that you don't necessarily know. At the very least, I say consult with an attorney if you have one of those online documents and say, what do you think of this? What concerns should I have? Is there anything else that you think I need to think about for this document? And a lot of times, attorneys can tell you, yes, I think you need to add X, Y, and Z, or we need to take this out, or, are you okay with waiving this? Or, waiving spousal support is another thing that we see in those prenups that people don't realize that they've signed, and then it becomes difficult to undo.
That is great advice. I am a major advocate for attorney consultations. One thing that I mention every time I am a presenter at the second Saturday up at Lake Norman, or really any of the second Saturdays that I present, I know it's hard for people financially. when you go from all the money maintaining one household to the same amount of money now maintaining two households.
Yes.
But the money, the three, four, $500 that you may pay for a consultation is going to be a drop in the bucket to the situation you may find yourself in by doing something, signing something without having an attorney know about it or look it
Absolutely.
over to give their advice because you guys just know things that we do not know.
Yeah.
So it's
I mean, I think we also see it. Like, we have people come into our office with these documents and we don't want it to happen. Even as I said, I love that you are pro consultations with attorneys because you're right. There could be something that you're missing that, could hurt you in the long run. Whereas if you just, you know, maybe saved up that money or, then you would know. So,
right. I agree. Well, speaking of which, if someone is actually looking for an attorney, if they've made the decision, even if they haven't made the decision to move out, but they're contemplating in their head, to start looking for an attorney, what should people look for? Are there questions that they should ask the attorney? What kind of advice would
yeah.
you give if someone's out there searching for an attorney?
Yeah, I like this question a lot because I think it's important. Not everyone is a good fit for every attorney, And so I think you have to be comfortable with that person. This process is so personal. So you have to know I'm open to sharing this information with them. I trust them. I think, having an attorney who considers, your financial ability at that time, what you can do, what you can't do, an important thing for me is I really want to consider, my clients, I want to tell them up front, our contact every time we connect with each other, it's going to be billed. Now, if you are fine with that and you want to pay, that bill, then that is great. However, just know that we will reach out to you if something happens. I think communication is huge between attorneys and clients. I think, you want to make sure that this attorney is communicative. I think asking them, what's the best way to contact you? Do you have a paralegal? If there's an emergency, what should I do? And another thing as far as the consult goes is I think that you should come in bringing as many documents as you can. And documents like, showing what your marital estate looks like. So, real estate documents, mortgages, HELOCs, if you have a recent appraisal or a Zillow value on your house, Kelly Blue Book values on your vehicles, bank account statements, debt statements, anything like that. Come in prepared. So that way you and your attorney can, talk through a potential roadmap of, this is what it's going to look like. And, here are potential ways that we can handle it. And so I think that, just asking questions of your attorney, and outlining your goals. I think if your attorney knows what your ultimate goals are, whether that be, I want, primary custody of the kids for X, Y, and Z reasons, or, I want to keep the house for these reasons. I think having your attorney know what your goals are is super important because then those can be at the forefront of all of the decisions they're helping you make and say, okay, how is this going to help us get to your goals or help you achieve your goals?
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. So if someone is thinking about leaving, so the primary thing is they should go ahead and start getting some information together, even if, just so they kind of have some things compiled for you so that when they come in, you can best use your hour with them or whatever the consultation is.
Yes. So I think definitely collecting as many documents as you can. Taking pictures of items, personal items in the house. That's something that a lot of people don't do if there's artwork or, certain furniture that you want. That way you have it documented that it's in there and, things like that. Another idea is if you think the opposing party is hiding cash or if you found cash, taking pictures of that cash so that way we have it documented. I think that all of these things, as well as, that extensive list of documents before, just getting everything you can together. And if you can't get everything, that's fine. We can still proceed and talk through it. But I think the more that you can give us ahead of time, the better we can spend that hour with you. So that way you're getting the most bang for your buck. Um,
Exactly. And, I am assuming, I know doing divorce real estate, the earlier they bring me in to the equation, the better off it is. The reason for that is I can advise them because I represent both sides, whereas you can't. You only can represent one side. But if I am representing both sides, I can help them decide what needs to be done, what's going to be most cost effective for them to do that's going to bring them the best rate of return on their investment,
yeah.
for something. But also I can help when they go to their attorney, knowing the market, I can help advise how to word verbiage in like consent. I mean, in the orders and the court orders or the separation agreements or whatever. I work alongside the attorneys to help do that. So I'm sure the same would probably be the same for you guys is the earlier they bring you in. In fact, if they come and see, I'm assuming this, you tell me if I'm wrong, but if they would come to see you when they're realizing something's just not right, and really they don't think they're going to divorce, but let me just start seeing what I need to do to get my ducks in a row. And if they just came to see you and said exactly that, and you could kind of walk them through, start keeping your eyes open for this, you
Yeah.
know, or start taking notes or, just have a notebook and start writing things down, whatever it is. I don't know what kind of advice you would give them at that point, but I would think that would be almost a clarity of mind for them because
Yes.
they're not trying to think backwards, they're thinking in the present moment as things are happening.
Yes. And I love that idea of the notebook because I think that, I know for my memory, especially having that notebook can kind of help you, remember, okay, here's an instance where, X, Y, and Z did this. And here's an instance of I'm scared they're moving money or something like that. So I love that
Mhm.
idea of the notebook because I think that is great. And you're right, coming to us sooner rather than later. Let's say you say, okay, I can do this on my own. And you start filing motions on, with the court. And then, we're already in litigation and you're like, wait, I want to try and settle this. Well, we can't bring it back down. We can always escalate it, but,
Right.
we can't de-escalate it at this point. So I think certainly, meeting with an attorney ahead of time and just kind of getting your ducks in a row to figure out, okay, again, these are my goals. This is what I want. This is what I'm thinking. Here are my concerns.
I had one of the presenters at Second Saturday said this one time. She does the financial portion of it, but I thought it was such a great idea. And the notebook was kind of her idea. I kind of stole it from her, saying it just now, but she also said, speaking about you guys billing, every time there's a phone call or an email or anything like that, she suggested in that same notebook that every time you have a question for your attorney to write it down in there. And then maybe once a week, send one email with all of these questions in it so that it could be more concise and you're not answering 100 emails. You're answering one email that may have 50 questions on it. I just thought that was such a good idea.
I love that idea because I also think, that it cuts down costs. My goal as an attorney is not to bill you, bill you, bill you, bill you, bill you. However, if you're reaching out to me 17 times a week, then that's going to happen. But if we have one email where we have all of our questions, and then hopefully, we can get it resolved through that, then that's great. And it cuts down costs for you. So I love that idea. I'm going to start implementing that
That
with.
I was going to say, that is my gift to you. Feel free to use it. It wasn't my
I
original
will.
idea.
That is a great idea.
Yeah, I
Um,
thought it was too. I mean, I tell that to everybody that I know personally that's going through a divorce. I'm like, look, let me tell you something that I heard one day in Second Saturday.
That's
So,
so smart. I mean, and
yeah,
even, thank goodness for the notes in our phones, because I'm across my
yeah.
house, screaming at it to add things to my grocery list. But, writing down notes in my phone, things like that. That's how I stay on track. So
I am a big list person. I mean, I
yeah.
have my list right here. In fact, I'm going to be marking this podcast off very soon that we have completed it. Okay. So is there anything that you would love to tell our listeners that we haven't had a chance to cover that you can think of?
I don't think so. I think, the biggest thing is consult with an attorney. It's really the best money you can spend. We are here to help you. And just emphasizing that not everything is like what you see on TV. We don't have to make this a knockdown, drag out fight in court. There are a lot of other ways that, attorneys can help you, get to your goals. And wrap this up so that way it's not, nasty, and we're not all hating each other. And again, loving those creative solutions. So definitely consult with an attorney. And I'm not just saying that because I am an attorney, but definitely, best money you can spend.
I totally agree. And I agree because all of us, I think, get our ideas of what attorneys are like from TV, and it is all drama. And it doesn't have to be like that,
No.
especially if you have um, a halfway decent relationship with the spouse or ex spouse that y'all could work together. It doesn't have to be so combative.
And I think it only gets worse if you go to court. Once you open that can of worms and you two are in a courtroom and you're duking it out, every terrible thing the other person has done to you comes out, and it just makes your relationship worse. So,
Yeah, I
um
agree.
we can do that if we need to, but definitely encourage attempting to resolve things for both your pocketbook and for your relationship with, the other party and your kids. So,
Exactly. Now, I'm gonna be putting all your information at the end, but just tell us how someone can reach you if they listen to this and want to get in touch with you.
yeah, so my phone number should be in the bottom. I don't know the office number off the top of my head, I will tell you. But my email is likely the quickest way to get a hold of me.
Yeah,
My email address is sarah@mturnerfamilylaw.com. Feel free to shoot me an email. We can set up a consult or some time to chat and kind of talk about your goals. And as I said, in both North and South Carolina.
that's great. And that's Sarah, Sarah.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. You have given us some great information. I am so glad that you came on here today to talk to us, and we really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, well, we will talk soon.
All right.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The information contained herein is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, please seek an attorney.